Welcome to the new season of Love Thy Number. I am so excited to share stories from people who are loving the gift of their own Enneagram numbers. I'm Danae King. I'm a type 7, and I'm so happy to host this conversation with you. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. I am super excited, as always, because I have the coolest guests. Today, I have Ashlee Sikorski. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
Yay! I did. She is, y'all, I'm sure you already know who she is, because if you're on Instagram, you know anything about the Enneagram, you have seen 9 shapes. She's the creator of 9 shapes, but we'll talk about that later. So, Ashlee is an ICF certified team development coach, working with organizations to boost productivity and build an advantageous team culture. I love that. She's also the founder, as I said, of the 9 Shapes Project, which aims to bring more curious conversations around the Enneagram to the world. Welcome, Ashlee.
Thank you, Danae.
I am so excited. This is one of the best things about this community, is how we get to connect through Instagram and our stories and our passions. And Ashlee, she started a Kickstarter program, and I saw what she was doing, and I was like, I am in. I like this. So I was one of your early Kickstarter.
Oh, Danae, you were an early adopter.
Yes.
Thank you.
So tell me, first of all, let's just start from the beginning here. And
Okay.
tell me where you are, and how you came to discover the Enneagram. I think this has to be a fascinating story because you are pretty young. So tell me.
Yeah. So I have known about the Enneagram for around 10 years now, and I first learned about it in college. And at the time, there was a couple of my friends who were in a leadership development class, and they were talking about this personality framework that they took. When we first went to school, everybody took strengths and knew about Myers-Briggs, but Enneagram still felt a little taboo or novel at the time. Even the teachers who taught it, they were just kind of the more wise, sage, spiritual, staff members at the school. So it was still more niche at the time. Wasn't nearly as popular as it is now. And a couple of friends were talking about it, and one of our friends had a smartphone. So we were so it was a flip phone or something like that. And we were at a donut shop, and I took an online test. And I think it might have been Alon's Ennea app. Or maybe it was something else at the time, but I had scored a type 2, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I read about it, and I was like, oh, that's me. That's awesome. And then a year later, I had gotten a book about the Enneagram, and I read through the 1, I read through the 2, and I was like, oh, that's me. And then I read through the 3, and I read the 3, and I was like, oh, wait, that's a little more me than a 2. And then I got to the 4, and I just was bawling, crying in the lobby of my dorm. And I had felt like nothing had ever come so close to describing me. And it was so exposing, but so good at the same time. I felt really known, and this wisdom literature had articulated parts about myself I could never have articulated myself. And there was key phrases that was you think nobody in the world is experiencing the level of pain that you are, but that's not true. And I was like, it is true.
It is like somebody's just watching you through your window your whole life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then after that, I went on Enneagram Institute, and my husband, and he was my boyfriend at the time. So we've been together for about 9 years now. And he identified with the type 5. And I felt like always our relationship was a little atypical than other people.
Of course you did. Oh, I didn't mean that.
Yeah. No, that's okay. It's just like people would talk about like, oh yeah, the honeymoon stage of a new relationship. And I was like, oh, Trevor and I like climb the roof of the library at night and talk about philosophy and
Oh, wow.
and I felt like we weren't, I mean, it was like honeymoon period, but it always felt like our conversations were actually a little painful even after, like, why do you think we're here? Like on this earth type of thing. And we actually needed to learn like how to have a little bit more fun in our first couple of years of dating. That was part of our journey. But anyways, so I was really drawn to it actually because of this relationship that felt really unique and different than my friends. And Enneagram put language around these like two temperaments in relationship.
That's a very interesting duo.
Yeah.
And the 5. And of course, wings is one thing. And I don't know how you feel about wings. I feel like they're just like an added thing, but being so close to each other and yet so far apart because you're in totally different triads.
Right.
So,
yeah. And it's definitely hard for me to access more of a head energy, and it is hard for him to access more of a heart energy. And then we connect over that like existential hole.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and so you've been together 9 years?
Yeah, we have it.
So he's been on this path with you for the whole time? So he has been aware since the beginning?
Yeah, he has.
Nice. Oh my gosh. See, I am so hopeful that people like you, that we're going to go into a little bit more about what you do in your business world, but that because you are in this generation, that you can have these conversations and not have to address it on the back end, but go more into the relationship, the beginning, with both of you having this language. And you know, if you can just have, like, I really think it's just such a like an actual language barrier. You're speaking French and he's speaking, you know, Japanese or whatever. And you have these energies that you like about each other. But man, when you can put language around it, like you said, then the conversations you can have about why are we here on this earth?
100%. And having Enneagram, it has been the most powerful tool in my marriage, in my individual growth, but even more specifically, Trevor and I have a really rich and life-giving relationship. And there were key years that I felt like it really could have turned sour. And Enneagram helped so much in giving us tools, empathy, and perspective. Like, oh yeah, like this is why you are the way that you are. I can be a little bit more emotionally demanding and like damsel in distress. And Trevor can be attracted to being that rescuer, kind of like having the information needed. And so it's been so helpful in knowing our different dynamics. And one example I want to give about my sweet 5 husband is during our dating relationship, we dated for about 4 years before we got married. And I would always complain to him, like, you don't get me flowers. Oh, this is so cliche now. And like, I just like, I hate even that I was like this. Or like, you don't like, you know, do this, or like, you're not expressive. Like if I got him a gift, he would like be a stormtrooper from Star Wars. And he'd open it up. Yeah. And then the day he proposed to me, Trevor had compiled a book of poetry that he had been writing about me and our relationship since the day we met. That he like hand bounded, and I had no idea he was writing these poems about me for 4 years.
Oh my gosh, my heart is just melting. That's just so sweet.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, that is like such a 5, like keeping things like private and to themselves. Whereas like I write like a line of a poem and I'm like, Trevor, I wrote this thing about you and I want you to know about it right now. And I love you so much. Do you love me?
Oh, this is just so, gosh, this is so empowering to hear this, because so many young couples, again, I just say they just go in with absolutely no clue about, why is she reacting that way? Why is he not coming to my rescue at this point? But good for you guys. That's beautiful. And thank you for sharing that. I hope he doesn't mind.
No, I don't think so.
All his guy friends are like, oh, dude, thanks for making us look bad. No. Okay, so because I am so excited about the 9 shapes, I want you to give us a little background on how you even came up with this, and then what we can do to help spread this word.
Yeah, so 9 Shapes was birthed about a year ago, where I had connected with my friend Leah Lavelle, who's a graphic artist, and we were working on creating visuals around the Enneagram for my workshops. And I just would get so frustrated with all Enneagram art that was available at that time. And it just felt like everything was really cliché. Like a 3 would be holding a trophy, or a 5 would be reading, or a 7 would be doing a cartwheel, a 4 would be crying. And I know. And I just felt like, I'm like, well, everybody does all those things. And that was juxtaposed with a frustration that I had with people entering into a half knowledge phase of the Enneagram. And like Alexander Pope said in one of his famous poems, like, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. And, folks in this half knowledge phase tend to stereotype people and assume that they know, 80% of what it's like being that person based off if they know their Enneagram type. And that felt wrong to me. So Leah actually asked me, like, well, what sort of art have you been inspired by lately? And we created a mood board, and I told her, since I've been to London, I saw this like Henry Matisse cutout, and I was like so drawn to it. And she's like, well, what if we did shapes? And I was like, no, that's like a little crazy. And then I was like, well, actually, like, it's kind of the perfect border of like too crazy, but also it just might work. So I went home that night, and for like a frantic, kind of chaotic couple of hours, the 9 shapes, most of them just like came to me that night. Like, I painted and I spray painted. I was like cutting like old fabrics and Trader Joe's bags from the grocery store. And there was actually only 2 types that I would say, nail down the first time. And it's interestingly enough, those are the 2 types I think I like struggle with understanding the most, even though I connect to their energies. And then after that, I got feedback from people who were those Enneagram types, and I asked about color and shape, and then small tweaks were made leading up to it. Yeah, so that's the development of the actual 9 shapes. And then the questions were a side project, so it's kind of funny how they like combined. But I had someone attend one of my workshops and say, you should create question cards based off the questions you ask in workshops. So I carried a notebook around, and I would go through different types. And I was like, okay, if I was genuinely curious about a type 6 or a type 9, what questions would I ask them? And as they came up, I would write them down. So then those 2 projects came together for the 9 shapes as we know it now.
Listen, that is such a bold project to undertake, because it is big, and it can be very difficult, because let me go back. I love the video that you've got on the site on how to play the game. And the part that just spoke to me so strongly is getting comfortable with when there's the silence, and you're not allowed to talk over each other.
Right.
I just got back from San Francisco with Ginger Lapid Bogda, and she said 7s, their style of conversation is they'll talk over you. And it's not that they're being rude, it's that it's this energy of, oh yeah, let's just keep the energy up and be engaged. And if you're talking over me and I'm talking over you, then we're just really getting along. And she is so spot on, sitting in that silence. But the questions that you've come up with, just to listen to one person, be able to know that no one else is going to fill in the blanks for them, and that this is their time to really dig deep. And the questions are great. They're great. So, what was I going to say? Oh, I love the shapes. Of course, immediately I was like, oh, that's a cool shape for a 7.
Yeah.
So I went into that.
Yeah, I love the 7 shape too. That was actually one of the ones I needed feedback on from my 7 friends. And I think the main design choice that made it come to life was making it, at first it was a forest green, which didn't fit. Like forest green feels like staunchy or timeless, and it just wasn't the right color. And actually a light blue added so much fun and daydream, but then also like intellect. Blue is a very intelligent color. And that really made the shape come to life.
See, this is a very well thought out. And I was telling you before we started recording, and I want to just say this out there. They are nice cards. So like if you go to the drugstore and you get a set of just regular cards to play solitaire on the plane, and you know how they're flimsy? And these are such great quality. Everything about this is just, you can tell somebody who poured their heart into it. And so I'm so happy for you. But you said something, we talked earlier before we started recording, and you just alluded to it again. And that is the assumptions that people make once they know your type, your number. And it's like, oh yeah. And so they think they mostly know you. Mm-hmm. And so when you and I started talking, I was like, I was trying to do my research ahead of time, and I looked all over the place trying to find your type. And I could not find it in any of the, it's not on your website. And I didn't really find it on Instagram. And I thought, this is so interesting. And so based on that, I wanted to ask you why you chose. You said we could talk about it now, but why do you think at this point, when the Enneagram has become so popular, people are still so quick to make these assumptions?
Yeah, that's a good question. And part of me thinks like our brain is evolved to not want to do the work that it really takes to get to know people. There was a study that was saying like, we can only physically, like our brain can only have the capacity for 160 relationships. And like all of us want thousands of Facebook followers or Instagram followers or Facebook friends. And we like actually physically can't do that. So in some part, like I want to give humans the benefit of the doubt and just thinking through like, oh yeah, like compartmentalization can help us not use as much energy. And then also I would say like the harsher side of me that's more, being a critic is like we get relationally lazy. And actually like having depth with one or a couple of people takes time and takes work. And maybe too, what's happening is people aren't doing the work themselves. So if they're only in touch with like the positives of their number and not so much the shadow side. And I think that's a big thing with my generation is there's a lot of short snippets of contextless information on like social media. And then people are like, oh, I'm this, I'm that. And then they use Enneagram as like a badge or even an excuse at different times. So if they aren't doing the work on their own number and understanding that both the like positives and the shadow self, the ego development that's protecting you, it's kind of easy then to project that same principle on someone else as they're like, oh, they're this type. And Danae, what I was sharing with you earlier is, I was like shy to share my type at first because I've been hurt by people who've known me, and I'm like, oh yeah, like this is my type. I'm dominant in type 4, self-preservation 4. And, people would say things like, you're not sad, or you're not artsy. You don't shop at Hot Topic. It's just so confusing.
Oh my gosh, that's a great line.
And a very hypersensitive, average to unhealthy 4, which, would be me, especially in those moments, would say, like, feel more misunderstood. So I think part of it is, I think part of me did want to set like a trend of not using Enneagram as a badge. But then also, I think that it is like, I'm being very vulnerable right now, but even my ego saying like, oh, if other people are going to post this, I'm going to be different and like not post this. And then I think there are some guiding principles that like set me in that path. And then what I was sharing with you earlier, Danae, I'm like accepting and swallowing the truth of like, okay, I need to be seen, and I'm an Enneagram teacher now. I can't be shy with this, and I'm going to start being more open with sharing my type.
Well, I know I just set you up for that question because everything you said is exactly what I believe. I just wanted to hear it from your perspective. And it's just, yes, we live in a time where we want instant information.
Right.
Just give me the facts. Give me, we just pick up our phones and go, Siri, tell me what this is. And then she gives you, oh, here's something I found on the web. You take that first line from Wikipedia and go, okay, good, that's it. So what you said is we are so fast paced that it's to get to know somebody on a deeper level is work. Mm-hmm. And when 160 relationships makes me tired, and I'm a 7, so
you're a special 7.
Yeah, exactly, I am. But no, I'm telling you, at first, just getting to know me and understand what makes me tick was a big enough challenge. And I know this is part of the problem, and why I love that you chose shapes for the game. It's and going against the the person doing the cartwheel, somebody crying, the trophy, which was it's just that's become our default. Is I know who you are. You're sad, and you're not. So thank you for, my gosh, being so vulnerable, putting your heart into this, and starting a conversation that will let us go beyond the meme. Life beyond the meme. Yes.
Go beyond the meme. Yeah. And I think Enneagram can be fun and playful as well, as long as it's balanced with like, oh yeah, like this is some like serious, painful work.
Yeah. And we need to laugh in between all those. So yes.
Totally.
And I like some of the memes. It seems they're just, there's a lot of them and they're exhausting, but anyway. Okay. Well, in the time that we have, I want to move on to asking you about a workshop that you did, if you don't mind sharing this, and you can take as much, time as you want and divulge as much as you want. But you did this workshop or project called the Adoption Triad. Do you mind sharing about that?
No, not at all. So, I just got back from a weekend in Palm Springs where I worked with a nonprofit called Kindred and Company. And they make adoption books, but then also create safe spaces for the adoption triad, which I had no idea what that was when I first got connected with them. So it is the birth mom, the adoptee, and the adoptive parent, and creating conversations for those 3 parts of the adoption triad, these 3 pieces of relationship. So at this retreat, and it was their first time doing this, they were really hesitant doing it. It's really novel and cutting edge a lot of times. And I am not well versed in this, but I heard so many broken and hard stories about closed adoptions, open adoptions, birth moms who felt coerced into giving up their baby. Maybe they were in a vulnerable position and then regretted it, or, birth moms who really want to get to know their child after the fact, and now the child's like, no, like that doesn't feel appropriate anymore. So there's a lot of different views and dynamics at play, as you can imagine.
I can, yes.
Yeah. So and the main thing that they just did, and they were so simple about it, they're like, we want processed people who are able to tell their stories and not get defensive. Like, we're not taking sides here, and we're just creating a space for unity in the adoption triad. So they had birth moms, they had adoptees, and then they had the adoptive parents all come to a room to learn Enneagram as a symbol of unity and that we all need each other, which was really powerful, and then also share stories.
So are you saying, was it the actual birth mother, adopted mother, and the adoptee? I mean, like that one little triad there, or were they just,
There was one grouping or two people that were connected, but everybody else was just a member of a triad, but the parties weren't there.
Gotcha. Okay. But there were two?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's very powerful, beautiful, redemptive, like very redemptive and beautiful, just that they're able to be in relationship together and have challenging conversations.
That's an amazing tool to bring to people who probably bring already quite their own, how do I say this, hard, difficult stories.
Yeah.
In general, not everyone who chooses adoption is because they can't have a natural childbirth. So
Right.
the stories that are what brought them to want to be adoptive parents, then to be the child who is the adoptee, and the birth mother who has her own story of, it's the painful stories. All of these have elements of pain. And I think bringing out the new language to deal with the story that is behind all of this had to just be empowering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it was actually really incredible too to see all these gals had connected. They were from all different states, like New England, Connecticut, California, Oregon, like all different parts of the US, and they had actually gotten connected through their stories through social media, and have made genuine impact in each other's lives. But then to actually see them come together in an on-site and say like, whoa, I'm not the only one in pain in this. Like, we're all experiencing this, and like shouldering that pain just seemed really healing.
And that's the whole mission of who we are, is to connect our stories and find out that we have more in common than we think we do.
Yeah.
Our stories are more interwoven than we could ever imagine. I mean, good grief, before you and I even started this recording, we started talking about some things that were like, oh, wow, that's a language that not everybody speaks, but somehow you and I connected on words that spiritual conversation that's separate and apart from, a religious conversation. It was like, oh, yes,
Right.
we get each other.
Yeah.
So this is, I am very grateful that we have this map of self-discovery that has connected me and you from Atlanta, Georgia to Portland, Oregon. I don't know that we said that.
Yeah.
And all the places across the world that people are looking for community. And I think this is a new community.
Yeah.
Don't you think? Don't you think this is a great new community?
Yeah. And that's actually something that I'm really hopeful for in Enneagram becoming more popular and in vogue, is that there are people in my program that I went through with a Christian background, with a Hindu background, Judaism, like all these different backgrounds and parts of the world too. Like it's not just a specifically Western thing, which is so crazy to me that people can think of Enneagram that way because of
I know.
origins. I'm like, no.
Exactly.
It has the power to bring just different people together, but that common thread, like that spiritual piece of people who are searching, people that are asking, people who are hungry for something more.
That's it. That is why I love this, because it brings us together and doesn't create more division. Because what you said, the different, spiritual backgrounds, Hindu, Judaism, Christianity, all of these can come together. And this path, I hate to struggle for the right word, but this discovery, this tool, this map, lets us put aside the things that naturally seem to divide us. We get to put those down and connect and go, oh, look, we really are one humanity, just trying to be the best us we can be.
Totally.
So,
I love that about the Enneagram, how micro it can be to these like very small details of your internal world and personal development. And then it goes into this collective nature of 9 temperaments, 27 subtypes, also different, but needing to be together because we all have our blind spots. It's like, oh, whoa, we need each other. We need all of these energies to move forward and for healing.
Yes, ma'am. We need each other. That's the big takeaway. We are getting past 30 minutes now. I could sit here and talk to you all day, but aren't you going to be on a webinar workshop this Sunday?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I am.
Yeah, you do so many things. You do business coaching and workshops and all of this. What's going to happen Sunday?
So I am working with a local wellness group, and it's going to be a free webinar where we're just going to talk about foundation of Enneagram and go over the 9 types. But even more importantly, make sure everybody leaves with resources and next steps, because you and I both know when asked to teach an hour, it can be kind of difficult.
Right.
Yeah. One of the most challenging sessions I've done was I was asked to speak for 45 minutes at a conference as a breakout session. And they said, we want something interactive about the Enneagram, and nobody in our group knows Enneagram.
Oh, great.
And there's going to be 75 people.
Teach us what you've got in 45 minutes.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, okay, yeah, we can do that. But going back to what we were saying about like we want things quick.
Oh yes. Yeah. Give me when I was in school, we had these things called Cliff Notes. Do those even exist anymore?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we want. Give me the Cliff Notes.
Yeah, totally.
Well, by the time this thing airs, this podcast, you will have already done the online thing that's this Sunday, but I didn't even say anything to you about it. I'll see you. I'll be there.
Oh,
I'm going to be on. And people can find you on Instagram, and I will put the links to that. And I will put the link to your website, because you do one-on-one coaching, and you do it via Zoom. You can also, right? Am I right?
Yeah. So I do over the phone or face-to-face coaching, whether that's electronic or meeting in person, and then team facilitation. So group offsites and onsites and team retreats.
Well, the Enneagram world and the world in general is blessed to have you leading the way for your generation and for all generations, the older ones who are just stepping into it. But I have such hope for those that are coming up that are your age and even younger, because it's people like you who are putting the hard work in and making the commitment to bring people together and to understand the beauty of who we are. And from me to you, thank you, Ashlee. for doing this work.
Well, thank you, Danae, and I appreciate you holding these spaces and facilitating meaningful conversations of your own.
Thank you. Again, I'll put up all the links to all of her connection places, socials and otherwise. And this has been my pleasure. Y'all, I hope everybody truly gets to know the joy of who they are by loving their number. Thank you, Ashlee, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye.